disruptions and the booing that he faced last night.
What happened yesterday, where the national chair could not address, embarrasses us as the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, but it's foreign from it's foreign to the tradition of the ANC. In our discussion here, it has transpired that there is a level of frustration from ANC members about what is alleged to be divisive and interference from some leaders of the ANC at a national level who peddles divisions in the ANC in the province. And by association, national officials get affected as if it is directed to them, but it is some comrades who have gone public speaking, saying number of things in public, some comrades who are alleged to be meeting with comrades, and therefore the national chair was just a victim.
Well, for more analysis on that PEC, we're now joined on the line by Lebohang Pheko. Lebohang, thank you so much for joining us. What do you make of the KZN conference not going ahead because of those disgruntled members yet again?
So I think that there are a couple of things that emerge quite clearly. The one is that this is an implosion and an aggregation of previous years and months of tension within the ANC. Secondly, it's also an aggregation of the kind of tension that has at a particular kind of politics that takes place in Sihle Zikalala in KwaZulu-Natal. So that tension is linked to the power and of the former president within the ANC and within the KwaZulu-Natal region. It also illustrates the kind of visceral, divisive, very violent strongman politics that play themselves out particularly in that province historically. And this is not something that began this weekend or over the last couple of months, but certainly over the last 10, 20, 30 years. If you recall that Mr. Zuma himself was part of a peace deal.
Lebohang, sorry, please forgive me. We're having a terrible line with you, but just forgive me if I'm sounding repetitive on issues that you've addressed. But let's try this now. You know, Lebohang, what surprises me is that we see senior leaders like your Gwede Mantashe being booed and heckled, meaning it's very clear that even the higher structures are struggling to get to the root of these problems from branch level. This is a really serious problem for the ruling party.
Look, I think it links to what I was trying to say, which is that there's a culture that has emerged of a particular kind of strongman violence. It is also personality driven. And when personalities are linked to oversee party political processes and party political discipline, this is some of the outflow of that. The inability or the incapacity of being able to then deal with internal factionalism. It's interesting that Mr. Zuma was part of a particular form of peace building in the 1990s, but he has shown very little interest in trying to foment any sort of peace and any kind of stability during his tenure. Now, the culture that we see where people are now booed, the Secretary General and so on is booed, this again is a feature of the sort of politicking that emerged during the run-up to the Polokwane conference and post-Polokwane, where T-shirts were being burned, effigies of people were being effigies of corpses, and coffins were being carried around. So that sort of very hateful, vitriolic, toxic, personality-driven politics is exactly the antithesis of peace building and unifying. And of course, it's far from party discipline, and it's also very visceral. So this is a form of political intimidation. So you boo somebody down, you shout somebody down here, you hold a different opinion to yourself or to a particular faction. So the battle is not to the ideas or the greatest capacity to lead, who have the greatest track record, but the ones who have the most velocity and the greatest capacity to organize dissenters, to organize crowds, to shout the loudest. And that's really not acceptable, but that's really the level at which really we see the politics operating currently.
You know, Lebohang, that actually brings me to this point. I mean, the PC in this province had been given more than ample time to address this issue since the December conference. The provincial task team seemingly is in way above their heads. What do you think would be the best way for the party to move forward? Because we are seeing, I'm thinking the members of the ANC that were disgruntled are saying the people that you've put in as part of that provincial task team are also the very same people that were in the nullified PEC.
Yeah, so Bosenzum Chunan and Kuno and so on and so forth. And then this links to the kind of alignment that party leadership in the province and across provinces. It's not only a KZN thing. You'll find the same thing in Free State with Ace Mahashula. You'll find the same thing in the Northwest and so on. Yes. But the way in which party politicking is linked with personality strongly and the ability to mobilize factions the most robustly, which means then in fact that this is not something that could have been handled in 6 months. I think
absolutely
that the best way to deal with this would be to in fact party political structures and start from the ground up. That's not going to take 6 months. That's going to take years and years. But it takes a particular... Mr. Ramaphosa needs a much stronger team and a cohesive team around him. A team that commands respect and a team that commands the sort of gravitas to be able to go in and do this sort of troubleshooting. That is going to be a key feature of their work over the next while, particularly between now and the election. Let alone the fact that we hear rumors afoot that there's a kind of a Zuma supporting party that may or may not be afoot. I don't know.
Look, Lebohang, before I let you go, we're still struggling with your line. Look, the visible divisions, you're speaking about political party structures here. I mean, the visible fractures within the ANC are somewhat similar to what we're seeing within the DA. There is absolutely no unity among members, and these bad public spats have the potential, as you've just mentioned, to ruin the parties at the ballot boxes next year. I mean, we're all looking towards the election year, but it seems like it's going to be a difficult task.
Yeah, but I think the genesis of the DA, the genesis and the DNA of the genesis and the DA, the DNA of the Democratic Alliance and the ANC are so very different. Actually, they're so very different. But it does boil down to a sense in which the two major parties are at a point of implosion, which does a couple of things. It either points to the fact that there are other parties that may come into the fore, there are other opposition possibilities that may actually manage to maximize, capitalize on the lack of cohesion of the two biggest parties. So it opens up the possibilities for voters to perhaps make different choices and for of course, the opposition parties to mop up the crumbs of dissent which seem to be emerging, and the kind of the division that seems to be emerging. The main party's division is certainly their game. It's certainly opposition parties' game.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you so much, Lebohang. That is Lebohang Pheko, is a senior research fellow with the Trade Collective, and she was just giving her perspective on the NC's PC that didn't go ahead as planned.